Hello, we're going to go into some detail on what the future holds for Canon and Nikon. And while you think you've seen this video before from a week ago, you really haven't. And if you want to share a video with somebody, make sure it's this one. I do love the irony of using high technology. Like I have a full-frame sensor here and a DX sensor here with a 150-year-old slate board from an old-time like Little House on the Prairie sort of scenario of the schoolhouse. I love that. I love the juxtaposition. This is the future of what is going to happen. I'm going to tell you something and you should find it fascinating, and please bear with me on this one. And like I said, share this video with other people, because this is what Canon and Nikon and Nikon rumors, nobody's going to tell you this, but this is exactly what's happening. I'm going to tell you why it's happening and what to expect. Therefore, you'll be ahead of everybody in knowing the future of digital photography, because I can assure you 150% this is exactly what it's going to be. I was chess champion in high school, I was chess champion in college, and I was that for a reason, because I could always see 10 moves ahead of what was going on. Apple got pissed at me because I actually announced the release date of some of their operating systems. Nobody knew when it was going to be released. They knew it was going to be a certain day, but I let it spill that it would be released on Greenwich Mean Time, and Apple chided me for that because that's exactly when they released it. They didn't want their servers to crash by having everybody know that, but I let that information slip out. I also knew when they were going to bomb Baghdad, right to the hour. How did I know that? Since I'm obviously not in the White House or the Pentagon, because I knew there was going to be a Linnean meteor shower, and that could have interfered with the GPS satellite tracking systems for the cruise missiles. And George Bush was about to launch an attack on Baghdad, and they had no idea when it was going to occur, but I knew exactly when it was going to occur. Not to the hour, but to the day. I knew they would launch it before the meteor shower because they were worried about GPS satellite disruption, feeding signals to the cruise missiles. Maybe I shouldn't have let that information leak out, but I did, and CNN reported it. And, well, maybe I shouldn't say that. But it's actually absolutely true. Anyway, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. What is going to happen and why it's going to happen, and let's make a comparison with radio astronomy, because electromagnetism is electromagnetism. Now you're going to think, what does digital photography have to do with radio astronomy? Well, let's first take a look at full-frame sensors. Let's take a look at DX sensors. Obviously, we have tighter pixel density on the DX sensors. We have larger photo sites, much smaller pixel density. The average FX sensor, full-frame sensor, the actual photo sites cover roughly between 50-60% of the sensor. You're thinking, well, they're really huge, they must cover the entire sensor, but they don't. Now, as is the case, while smaller pixel sites have higher noise due to lower gain, just like a smaller door, lets less in, this actually has been eliminated now by SNR compression algorithms, signal-to-noise compression algorithms. Let's take a crude look at an example of a small photo site over here. By the way, each one of the photo sites has a small lens on it. Now, as you can see over here, just as a crude example, we actually have low gain on the smaller photo sites, and we have large noise, and this is actually transferred over to SNR processing, AD converters, and onto the buffer, and onto the SD card or the compact flash card. Over here we have example of a larger photo site. Here we have a lens. Now, one of the great things about this is, and a bad thing, with every good thing there comes a bad thing, right? You have a much larger door, but you're letting in more crap. In other words, it's kind of like flinging your doors open, not just to your neighbors or to your family members, but every Tom, Dick, and Harry. Same thing goes on with larger photo sites. While we have less noise, we have higher gain on the photo sites. We're also letting in peripheral information, since we have these lenses on top of the photo sites, and that creates an issue. Okay, so actually larger photo sites have an issue. Larger pixel sites have much higher gain, obviously, due to greater capacitance. They also likewise are more prone to greater peripheral noise, just as a larger door lets in more of everything. Now, radio astronomy, like I said, electromagnetism is electromagnetism, as is the case by using like the old Arecibo dishes and the larger radio astronomy dishes. It was discovered, obviously, while we have much less noise and much higher gain, the radio telescopes actually had a lot of issues with intercepting peripheral noise from like TV satellites, Dish Network. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of satellites out there. We're trying to actually get in signals from millions and millions of light years away. What we're having is these, the signals aren't that extremely strong from the satellites, but compared to millions, hundreds of millions of light years away, the actual signal gain, they're getting tons and tons of interference they had to chop out. So they figured out, the same way digital SLR manufacturers figured out when creating their sensors, that actually the dense aperture, the smaller phased array, in this case the smaller pixel density, was actually better by the introduction of SNR algorithms. Let me show you something from radio astronomy that 100% mimics exactly what is going on in digital photography. It mimics it to a T, okay? And remember, by the way, everything now in the next 5 years, probably sooner, we're getting 4K monitors out right now, correct? Right now you got a Samsung or an LG monitor, who gives a damn, right? You got a 36 megapixel image, you can blow it up and it looks great. Now what happens is you take that same image and you display it on a 4K monitor. Now obviously 10 megapixel images from the D700 will make lovely 20 by 30 prints, even up to poster and larger. But obviously there are a lot of advantages in having more information. Let's take a look at our image here. Why do you think nature photographers with $20,000 lenses are using DX sensors instead of full-frame sensors? Here's a 24 megapixel. Here, let's say this is a D7100. Let's say this is a D750 over here, both 24 megapixel. Let's actually strafe the same amount of light across both, right? Okay, where do you think the most data has been transmitted vis-a-vis the photo sites? That's right, it's correctly here. Now let's take a look, as I interrupted myself, at radio astronomy and its history, which exactly mirrors digital photography. Okay? Okay, last 75 years, single pixel large dish antennas like the huge Arecibo array, which is in Costa Rica. It's just a ginormous, you probably remember that from the James Bond movie. It's just a huge ass freaking dish. Great thing, low noise, high gain, but it's also getting tons of crap from satellites overhead, which are feeding your DirecTV, Dish, government, just GPS. I mean, every friggin' thing is pouring into this bitch. They're trying to get signals from hundreds of millions of light years away, but everything in the world is dumping into this dish. Okay, so when this is analogous to film photography, right? Single pixel. Now, what would be analogous to single pixel? Talking about a single piece of 35 millimeter film. Last 50 years, obviously the time is off a little bit between this and digital photography, but it follows it exactly. Sparse aperture synthesis array. First generation of digital. Same thing. Remember those old backs that used to go on the old film cameras? They were digital backs. Last 5 years, multi-pixel cluster feeds. Actually, let me turn it this way so I can show the whole thing. Moderate sparse, moderate density, full frame, and FX. Present day and future, dense aperture phased array and phased array feeds. The next Canon has already announced, and Nikon is following. They've both been working on this now for years, okay? Nikon and Canon both know that DX or APS-C crop sensor cameras are already kicking the ass of full frame. The actual advantages between APS-C and full frame sensors has narrowed enormously. They've been working, it's innovate or die when it comes to business. Now this is radio astronomy, this is actually for better gain and better reception. Of course, we're not working off of money here like Nikon and Canon and everybody else is, but it's innovate or die. And what has happened is now DX has almost all the advantages of full frame, okay, and none of the prior disadvantages of noise and gain issues, okay. As present, like in the D7200, for example, it is a high ISO winner. It is very close to the detail present in ultra low EV data retention on that DX sensor on the Nikon D7200 as the Nikon D750 is. This has nothing to do with the sensor. It actually has to do with SNR compression algorithms, which removes the time variable. Things have drastically changed. Let me go on to the next image. Used to be like this huge Arecibo dish. This is out in New Mexico. This is a VLA. It's a very large array. All of these, this is interferometry, by the way. All of these large dishes in a Y configuration mimic, using SNR compression algorithms, a huge, enormous, which could never be built, a huge, enormous dish of the same radius as all of these tiny, smaller. Well, these are actually not small, but compared to, it would be impossible to build a huge dish this big. The same thing applies. The signal, the noise issue, the noise gain issue on the smaller photosites and the less gain issues have been eliminated by SNR compression algorithm. Now this is applicable to radio astronomy, and it's exactly the same thing in digital photography. We have the reflector, in this case the lens, we have the ray feed, we have the LNAs as the network, it's like the analog to digital converters, we have the receiver, we have the bandwidth sampling, we have SNR time compression algorithm which eliminates the noise, and then we have the digital beamforming, which would be the buffer and the final digital processing that's sent off to the SD card. It's aperture synthesis or synthesis imaging, which is interferometry. Let me actually flip this over for you. The advent of 4K monitors, here's a really simple look at a digital camera. We have our sensor. Everybody thinks, well, this is X number of pixel sensors, and it goes directly as well. No, that's not the case. We got the sensor, we have the AD converters, we have this. There's a handful of geeks at Canon and Nikon. Literally 99.9% of people that work for Canon and Nikon don't know jack crap about what's going on right here. It's the same thing that's going on in advanced radio astronomy. Is signal to noise ratio compression algorithms which eliminates noise. Then it goes on to the buffer, then it goes on to the SD card. So you don't have the sensor in the SD card. Okay? It's not like your digital camera is capturing images and is sent off to your SD card. Well, yes it is, but there's a whole lot in between here that's made digital cameras so advanced. Nikon and Canon know this, that DX sensor cameras have come up to right near the level of full-frame sensor cameras. We have the sensor, we have the AD converter. Here we have the magical bits that allow the elimination of the former huge downside. Strictly on the sensor, these downsides still exist, but this eliminates the issues on the smaller photosites of the DX sensor versus the full frame. Here we have the full frame, over here we have the DX or crop sensor. Okay. We had a lot of noise, and we had small gain. Able to eliminate that. There's actually something else that's exactly similar to what hard drives use, and it's also part of the firmware that's in the SNR compression algorithms. It's partial response maximum likelihood and noise predictive maximum likelihood detection, or NPML. It is literally maximum likelihood prediction on the noise versus the signal that's received. So you have X amount of gain and we have X amount of noise, which is rather large on these smaller photosites. Let me quickly go on to video number 2, and we'll continue this discussion, and we'll tell you why this is the future technology of digital cameras, why it is, how it is, and why it's absolutely 100% logical. And this is something that you won't see at Nikon Rumors, you won't hear from Nikon for obvious reasons, and you're not going to hear from Canon. Okay, watch video number 2, and I will finish this up.